Okay, Manisha, I'm going to have you kick off the next question, which is what do you think is important to get done in the kickoff meeting with the client?
Right, so it's actually somewhat related to what we talked about in terms of the first meeting kickoff. But a few things. First of all, it's nice if you can get the entire team to come. It can be challenging sometimes to find days, but it's really good because you really want everyone on your team to sort of feel engaged with the client. And it's much easier if you're all there and you've met face to face. Not always possible, but good to try for. And I would say the same thing on the client side, because you will have one or two primary people of contact, but often there are more stakeholders involved. The board may be for example, just the example that April was giving, there might be one executive director you're dealing with, but it's really the board who thought they wanted to hire you, and it's good to have them there. Because one of the things you want to do in that meeting is you've worked out a work plan, you kind of know what the goal is, but you want to clarify it. And sometimes things change between the time that you set up your work plan and you met with them and when you actually have your team kickoff meeting. And it's always good to have all the possible stakeholders you can have there so that we can all get to know each other and kind of make sure that we have mutual clarification on the goal. The other good thing about having all the ACT team members there is related to what Cynthia was saying, which is it's really good for your client to know why you're there. Because from their perspective, you're doing this free work. Are you really going to be interested? Are you going to be engaged with them? And it's good for them to know why you're there. For example, with my client that we're working with, I'm really interested in education. And to let them know I've done a couple of projects in education, so I'm going to be pretty engaged at that level. For someone else to say, that this is a new area for me and I want to learn about it, or whatever it might be. It's just good for them to learn your perspective as well. Let's see. The goal, as I mentioned again, you want to make sure that you've clarified the goal and made sure that we still agree upon it. Because things just change all the time in projects. That's something you will find. I'm sure many of you had that kind of experience. Kind of a middle thing to do also is logistics in terms of, it's a good time to kind of find out, are there events coming up that are going to affect the project? There might be, again, in this past project that I was in, summer came in middle. It's very challenging to work with teachers and administrators of school when summer is here. And that was an important thing for us to time our project around. And it helps us to set the expectations. We said, we'd like to finish in October, but we have a feeling it'll be the tail end of October as opposed to the beginning of October. So it's simple stuff like that that can be good to kind of go over. And let's see, what else do we have? And the other thing that's good to do is once you've sort of gone through those basic things is give them an opportunity to do kind of an open Q&A with you. Just questions that they might have. Typically, you'll have had much more communication with the executive director, but less so with the rest of the board members or sort of ancillary members who are kind of important to the project, but you're not going to interact with them on a regular basis. And this is a good opportunity for you to understand a little bit about their perspective and find out if they have any questions.
I would second your notion about understanding what's on their horizon. On the project we did with the Japan Society, do you remember that they put on like an international conference right in the middle of the project? And the executive director disappeared for 3 months, and we did not know that when we started the project. The only other thing I would say about that first meeting with the client is I recommend that you get a commitment signed in blood from your primary contact that they're actually going to set aside the time to work with you. This is free, and I actually wish we charged them some minimal amount so they'd have more skin in the game. But one of the frustrations in working with the clients for me has been that this is just added onto everything else that these leaders of the organizations are expected to do. And I would argue that, especially for the small ones, except I experienced the same problem for a relatively large organization. So a clear understanding from the get-go that this is going to take a lot of your time, and tell them with as much specificity as you can what that commitment is going to be. And there are other resources, like one project, they didn't have any money for duplication of paper. Now, this is a few years ago, but, they need to put something into this, commit to it, and stick with it. And I think that first meeting is the time in which you got to set that down.
Just on our upcoming project, one way to get more commitment from the client is the Biodesign project has a 2-month checkpoint, a go or no-go, both from the client side and from the team side. Maybe that's from a psychology class of the more times they say yes, the more committed they are. It's the right thing to do if there's no money involved.
Liquid escalation.
Yes, that's right.